Good morning, all. It's day number 9, and we're still upright. So this is a good sign of our budget hearings. And I look forward for a good discussion here and conclusion on our discussion. Today is Friday, May 16th. And I see we have a number of people here visiting us, including the sheriff and some of his staff. It's great to see you, and thank you for being here this morning. And of course, our ever vigilant Siri and our county manager staff. We really appreciate that. So let's get started. Our first order of business is roll call. My name is Patrice Horseman. I am the supervisor for District Number 1 and also the chair of the board, District 2.
Good morning, everyone. Jeronimo Vasquez, Supervisor, District 2, and current Vice Chair.
District 3.
Good morning, Tammy Ontiveros, District 3.
District 4.
Judy Begay, District 4 Supervisor.
And District Number 5.
Supervisor Fowler is not on yet, but will be joining shortly.
Very good. All right. Well, when she joins, just let us know so we can reflect that in the record. So thank you. All right. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the county manager, although I do know we do have the sheriff here, and I know that they have a graduation to attend to. So we would like to give him an opportunity for some opening comments.
Thank you so much, Chair Horseman. And yes, that is true. As you know, we began conversations on compensation, pay plan. Yesterday, we're continuing that conversation, and here today to speak to it for the detention and patrol pay plan is Sheriff Brett Axlin, Chief Deputy Beck, and Commander Allen is here as well. So thank you so much for being here, Sheriff, and we know you have a graduation soon. So, and you're the keynote speaker, as we understand. So
yes, twice today now. All right. Thank you, County Manager. Good morning, Chair and members of the board. Brett Axlin, Sheriff of Coconino County. I wanted to just expand a little bit from yesterday's conversation. Am I not close enough? All right. Expand a little bit from yesterday's conversation. I know there was some questions and we weren't available to be here in person. So we appreciate the opportunity to come today and clarify a few things that were brought up yesterday so that we can answer any questions that are needed. First of all, we do want the board to know that we are very much so in sync with our county manager's office and our finance as far as the pay plans that have been presented both for detention and for patrol. We believe that this pay plan, while not the highest in our county, it's certainly a mid-range between all the different agencies within the county. We believe that will keep us competitive this year and able to recruit people. We certainly agree with our county manager's office in that it is most important to fill up our open positions prior to adding any new positions. So we know we have those requests within our budget, and we will continue to ask for more positions. But again, it's paramount and of primary concern that we fill the openings that we do have. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is with competitive pay. Is there any questions you have for me?
No, unless you would like to. I know we've got the pay plan for patrol. We took a look. I'm sorry. All right. We have technical issues, so is there, and thank you for that. And so we did, as you know, yesterday have a good discussion on detention, and today is our law enforcement patrol plan. And as we indicated, we've tried very hard to try to stay right on top of the compensation. It seems like every time we do that, they up the game, but we appreciate your diligence in working with the county manager's office. And you know that we appreciate the job that you do. We know it's a hard job. We know you all are putting your lives on the line, and it's probably the highest risk job. It is the highest risk job we have here in Coconino County. And so we want to acknowledge and recognize what you do for our health and safety and welfare here in the county. And you got a big job because it's one huge county. And we've got a lot of federal lands, and we know those federal lands are not patrolled. And we know you end up having to do the job many times of our federal lands as well. So we certainly appreciate that. And we also, you know, as things developed, as things go forward, you have come before us mid-year. And if there are things that occur that we need to be aware of, to take a look at, we're here and we're going to work with you on this. So appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Chair.
And yes, Supervisor Ontiveros.
Thank you, Chair, and let me just move this closer. Thank you, Sheriff, for being here this morning. Did you hear the conversation that we had yesterday? Kind of roughly, I think it was after you guys presented, what position was it that Flagstaff is paying $30,000 more on?
It is the position that the Flagstaff Police Department is paying in the neighborhood of $30,000 more is I believe it's a step 5, grade 5 sergeant.
Wow.
So it'd be a mid-level sergeant.
Wow.
And that's, and that's something that we, eventually we will address, but I think right now, where the county's at in their financial situation, and where we're at, I think we've come up with a pay plan that will certainly attract people in the door, which is very important, but also one that will retain them. There are certainly are different benefits by different agencies.
Yeah.
We have a great place to work in. We have great leadership, and we have just a wonderful community that we work for. And I think our people very much value that. And so I think that's part of our retention plan, is just creating a good work environment and a positive work environment for our folks.
Oh, no, I mean, you guys obviously have that. I mean, I see it when I intermingle and when I've been on tour, so I know that you guys have that. And I guess that where my question was yesterday, after the board hearing, when you guys presented, and I went home and I was kind of laying in bed and I'm like, the sheriff asked for a position, and I was reflecting on the information we were given that violent crime had risen in Coconino County 40%. And I know the train robberies are an ongoing thing. And I just wanted to be sure that you were okay with that. That was really it. And so we talked about it, and I know that they expressed that you were comfortable with the pay plan, with what had been done. And I said, if Sheriff Axland is comfortable with this, then Supervisor Ontiveros is as well. So I just wanted you to know that I just wanted to be sure that your needs were met.
Yes, ma'am. We were online, and we were actually in a real-time communication with the county manager's office during that discussion.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, because I so appreciate the work that you guys do for us. So thank you very much to all of your deputies, everyone. Kathy.
Thank you for your support.
Supervisor Vasquez.
Good morning, Sheriff.
morning.
Thank you for being here this morning. I was just curious, when we're looking at these, the law enforcement pay plans, how many officers are we talking about on the patrol side, and how many officers on the detention side are we talking about?
I think that would probably be the best question for our county manager. I believe she has the spreadsheets.
I do have a spreadsheet. I'll need to pull that up, but I can have that ready.
And I'm
Right.
sure you told us, it's just so much information as we're talking right now and listening, and I was looking at, and that was the one thing that still kind of struck up with me, was just, curiosity about how many officers are we actually talking about that this is going to impact. Now, I'm for the plan and the changes, but I'm just curious to see how many officers we're actually impacting. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting was what we were just talking about with the city of Flagstaff and a mid-level sergeants and the difference in pay. And so my question is the pay plan as we're going, while we're not moving up 30,000 for mid-level sergeant, is this enough to make sure that we're retaining our folks?
I can't speak for everybody. I can't speak certainly for the folks that are receiving these, but I think we have to look at the bigger picture and look at it from a lens of fairness, because we understand the position that you're in. It's obviously our job to provide for public safety, but it's your job to fund it. But you not only have to fund us, you have to fund the entire county. So we understand that, and we need to look at it from maybe a bigger picture, I guess.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And by the way, Supervisor Lena Fowler has joined us. Good morning, Lena. And Supervisor Begay.
On your pay plan for law enforcement, you do have forego step of patrol employees and ending the law enforcement incentive program for new hires. Can you elaborate a little bit on those two items?
I'm sorry, Chair, Supervisor Begay. The second one was the incentive plan, and I'm sorry, what was the first one?
It says forego step of patrol employees net 6% cost.
Okay.
And then the other one is ending the law enforcement incentive program for new hires.
Yes, ma'am. We, several years ago, we had worked with the county manager's office on an incentive pay plan. That was designed to basically be attached to certain years that go by as we tend to lose employees throughout their careers. We had adjusted that plan to be a payout of overall an 8-year period of $20,000. So it would be a 5,000, 10,000, 15, 5, 10, 15, and 20 to total $20,000, $5,000 each year, every 2 years up to 8 years. We were seeing, based on studies, that we were losing employees at that 2, 4, 6, and 8-year plan. It was a very good, actually really cutting edge pay plan that we did right around the 2016, 2017 period. No, I'm sorry, 2018, 2019 period. It was very innovative at the time. We were recognized by several different agencies and organizations for using that plan. Unfortunately, through the years, through inflation and everything else, that really timed itself out. And we are seeing now that what the new hires are looking for or focusing on is that entry number. They look at that starting pay when they come in the door. The second issue that you asked about was the step. So foregoing the step. So what that means is that with this approximate 10% step, we won't increase steps. So say a person is in step 5 of the plan, they will not, as they would normally move to a step 6 this year, they would stay in that step 5 and then get that pay increase. So it would in effect not be a 4% raise that they would normally get in the pay plan plus the 10%. It would just stay at the 10%, which in all reality then would equal a 6% increase above and beyond what the normal pay plan would be.
Oh, are we going to be talking about the detention part of it? Okay. Okay. Let's see. I think I was going to say something about the current entry, recommended entry, and also, but this calculation came at a 4%, right? Consolidates attention officers 1 and 2. Was that a 4% scale thing?
Yes, I think Supervisor Begay, if I could refer to our Deputy County Manager, Erica, on that.
Thank you, Supervisor Begay. So it wasn't a clear movement of we combined 2 titles. We didn't move them up a certain percentage. And so what we would be doing is in the combination of those 2 titles, finding the next closest step, and then they would get a step. So the difference is detention will receive a step in their plan and will go up 1 step. So if they're in step 5, they will go to step 6. On patrol, they will not move up a step. They will stay in step. And that is for cost effectiveness of the plan to have it only be a net 6% increase.
And you're going to take us through patrol here in just a minute.
I will, and I do have the numbers for Supervisor Vasquez too. I just needed a second. I'm so sorry. So a detention is about 83 staff and patrol is about 63 staff. And that's a point in time count because I'm looking at actually filled positions, not including vacancies.
I think with the issue that I had, I think Andy and I, myself, and Lena may be able to sit down with you later on that one. So, and you know what that is if you were listening yesterday. So otherwise, I don't have any other questions or comments.
Thank you, Supervisor Begay.
Anybody else? Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's great to see you all and your staff.
Thank you.
And please send our regards to the graduates. Thank you.
If we're ready, I'll jump in with the slide. Okay. All right. So good morning, formally, Chair Horseman, members of the board. Excited to continue our compensation discussion from yesterday and talk about the law enforcement pay plan for patrol. As Chair mentioned, we talked about detention yesterday, so this is the patrol side of the law enforcement pay plan. And what the county manager's office is recommending for the patrol pay plan is to modify the patrol ranges. You may recall I mentioned last week that Human Resources keeps an eye on law enforcement partners and the market and what's happening in the market, and does that proactively before we're losing people out the door to see if there's outpacing. And two agencies in particular were able to have good increases. NAU Police Department and Page Police Department had not previously had an entry salary higher than the sheriff's office in my tenure here. And so in looking at that, also a Flagstaff Police Department had an increase, but they would continue to be ahead of us, as would DPS and some other agencies. And so really, as the sheriff just mentioned, really looking at what we can afford to do to remain competitive, to not get behind, and to stay kind of middle of that compensation there. And so the sheriff's office had submitted increment requests, as Supervisor Ontiveros mentioned yesterday, for 2 deputies in Williams, 2 deputies in Flagstaff, and a professional standard sergeant. And also they had submitted a uniform allowance increase. And so these requests, instead of recommending them, we worked with the sheriff's office because some of these changes were being made between the time they were drafting those increment requests and the time those other pay plan changes were happening and we were watching the market, was to, instead of continuing to ask for those things, to ask for a pay plan adjustment so that we could fill the positions we have rather than getting new positions. And so when you look at the recommended increments on that first page of the tab, you'll see several that mention the pay plan instead. And so in collaboration with the sheriff's office, the county manager's office, we worked with them to really understand that they were in agreement that their priority was the pay plan rather than those 5 positions and the uniform allowance. And so in collaboration, HR drafted some potential improvements to the pay plan. And really one of the things we were looking at is, what is that entry rate that we could put on a job posting to really continue to attract new deputies? And this draft increases the entry pay from $28.25 to $31.41. There's a rounding there, $31.42. You see that on the slide here. And so that's something that helps us attract people, get people in the door. And in order to get that amount up that high, the sheriff's office was willing, as the sheriff just mentioned, to end the law enforcement incentive program for new hires. That program was going to need an infusement of money to remain in place. And rather than continue to invest in that incentive program, which didn't seem to be attracting employees as much as entry pay, that we would take that money and invest that into the adjustment of this plan. And so the other thing that I want to mention here on the second bullet, forego the step of patrol employees, we talked a minute about that just a minute ago, but I just want to take a minute to dive into a little bit more detail there. So when the board approves any type of compensation adjustment for all employees at 2.5% or something else, then the law enforcement pay plans get a step, and it's a 4% step. And as I mentioned yesterday, there's an entry and 8 steps, so there's kind of 9 steps, pushes them through those steps quicker, and then they reach the top. And once they're at that top step, they don't get any more increases unless they promote. And so by staying in the step, by a deputy staying in step 5, let's say, and not going to step 6, we were able to make this plan a net of a 6% cost, because there's a 4% step, 6% more, if it's an impact of 10%, but the net cost is 6%. And that's part of what also helped make this plan affordable, in addition to the ways that I've already mentioned. So the impact, which is our goal, is competitive wages for the patrol employees so that we can keep staffed, so that we continue to have employees in patrol doing that hard work. And the cost to the general fund, which is on the slide, is $600,000. That is in the county manager's recommendation for a balanced budget. And I'm happy to take any other questions that you may have on this pay plan or this slide.
Any questions, members of the board? You know, I know we have tried to absolutely stay, quite frankly, on top. I mean, we matched DPS mid-year to try to make sure that we were, right there with all of them. And it seems like they're all doing the same. So no matter what we do, it's going to be upped. And at some point, you're right, we've got to look at the full county and acknowledging the incredible work that gets done in the sheriff's office. We still have a budget we need to balance. So I think this is a good recommendation. I'm very glad to hear from the sheriff's office that they agree as well. And I don't know what the rest of the board members think, but I'm in favor of the recommendation of the county manager's office for the patrol compensation as well. Supervisor Vasquez.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm in favor of the plan as presented, and I appreciate the sheriff looking at the overall county and the impacts to the overall county budget to make these increases that make us competitive, but still not breaking the bank for the rest of the county. And so I appreciate that and just want to thank the sheriff for that.
Other comments? Supervisor Antiveros.
I will just restate that if the sheriff is pleased with this and happy, then that's good enough for me.
Supervisor Begay? Any comments? Supervisor Fowler, any comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sheriff, for doing your presentation and updating us. Through the years, the sheriff has been very creative and the county manager's office and team have been very creative in developing compensation and incentives for our law enforcement and just all the staff in the law enforcement and detention and then changing with the times. So the incentive program was a really great idea at the time. It was really good. We're all excited about it. And now I guess we're moving to another era right now. So I just appreciate them knowing their world and being able to present a budget that will work for them. So I'm in support of this plan, and thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fowler. Any other comments? All right, then we're ready to move on. And thank you. Thank you for being with us and staying with us here. Appreciate you guys.
So Chair Horstman, I wanted to circle back around to this slide. We mentioned it yesterday, and so just wanted to mention this, and particularly since Supervisor Fowler is able to be with us today, these were two items that she put on the follow-up list. And so the first one is alternative prosecution in the county attorney's office. As you'll recall, the county attorney's office submitted 10 increment requests, and the county manager was able to recommend in our balanced budget requests 1 through 5. So their priorities, because each department was asked to prioritize their increment requests, and based on the department's prioritization, the county manager was able to recommend 1 through 5. The alternative prosecution increment request was originally priority 7, and so it was not recommended by the county manager's office. And one of the factors in looking at that by the county manager's office is that this is for an extension or new recurring programming. And so the county manager's office did look at that and discuss that and also did follow up with Supervisor Fowler at the end of the day the other day And so we continue to have the recommendation that in the county manager's office not to recommend priority 7, but wanted to bring this back to your discussion if further discussion was needed.
It wasn't until now, so I want to try to figure out what you've done here. I think what you're saying, but correct me if I'm wrong, is the recommendations that were already recommended by the county manager's office continue to be recognized by the county manager's office. And there was a question I did ask, what was their number one priority, thinking it was probably going to be addition to making sure they had the resources necessary for prosecution and cases. And they came instead with the alternative prosecution, which is priority 7. And I'm going to just say this, at some point, we may be in a position where we can look at that, but this is a new program. And I don't think now is the time for us to look into new programs. And I'm also going to say this, sitting on the CJCC board, which I do, and seeing the work that is done across the criminal justice system on trying to, of course, keep those out of the criminal justice system in the first place. And that is all across all of the various departments doing that. And I really appreciate that kind of approach to law enforcement and that kind of approach to criminal justice. I also see the work that's done for suspension, diversions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, I guess what I'm saying is I see a lot of already alternative, if you will, to prosecution going on. And I know that arbitration mediation is also utilized on a regular basis. And so it's something possibly for the future. But I don't think now is the time to be expanding to these kind of additional programs. And I encourage the continued cooperation, collaboration, and communication across the departments within the criminal justice system to make sure that we're doing what we can, number one, to keep people out of criminal system, and number two, when they're in there, to get them the help that they need to, of course, be successful citizens and not increased recidivism. So those are my thoughts on it. So at this time, I am in favor of the recommendation that's been made by the county manager with regards to the county attorney's office. Any other comments or questions? Supervisor Vasquez.
For that position that's been requested, how much money is that exactly? I know it might have been in there, but you got to remember that was like a decade ago. At least feels that way.
Okay, let me flip to that. Hold on one moment because I don't remember off the top of my head. Okay, I did find it. Oh, there you go. Kim and I found it at the same, and Andy, 192,000.
192,000. Okay, thank you. And so I kind of feel the same way. Like on the one hand, I see the work that's being done, and I definitely see the benefit of adding a position there to the alternative prosecution. You know, it helps streamline some of these programs and help make it more robust. But I also understand our economic situation right now, and you know, we've always taken the policy of not expanding if we have to contract later. And this seems like one of those situations where, as much as I want to support it and want to fund it this year, I think we probably should wait a year and see where we're at, and then see if we can expand it. You know, if there are other ways to find support for this through grants and whatnot, we should be actively looking. But for right now, I would be okay with foregoing it until next year.
Any other comments? Supervisor Begay.
Yeah, so all these, the law clerk program is new, alternative prosecution programs is new, anti-human trafficking unit is new, public service specialist is a new position, and victims of crime positions funding change. Can you elaborate on the ones that are the new ones? And then,
Which ones are those? And you know, and I need my books that I need the whole thing down here, please.
So we're saying no new programs, trying to stick with that. So I'm just wondering which of these that I named off are new programs that they want to work with.
Thank you, Supervisor Begay. So the programs that you listed are not recommended. They're in gray, so they're not recommended by
Yeah.
the county manager's office this year. So they were increment priorities 6 through 10. The county attorney's office does have a law clerk program, but this would expand that program for additional law clerk hours and law clerk staff. The alternative prosecution programs, expansion and new programs, the anti-human trafficking unit, the Victims of Crime Act positions, funding change, those are things that the county attorney, when he was here, he was talking about growing those and as part of his vision for his term as county attorney. And so it was great to have him really outline his vision and where he wants to go. The county manager's recommendation focused on the software in this department and also the Division 7 positions. So for those of you who don't have your books, I'll just remind everyone of what was recommended, which the Division 7 positions for 132, 631, the county civil counsel for 100,000, the 5% CPI, the Axon evidence management software for over 71,000, and the JasperSoft software for 10,000. So we really focused on those priorities rather than the programs.
Okay, I guess I was wondering why the anti-human trafficking unit, is that new? Is that a new program, or it's going to be an expansion?
Supervisor Begay, they are doing some of that work, but it is an expansion of that program, and they want to continue to do more. So they will continue doing
talk
pieces,
about that,
yes.
because I've raised this, because that was a concern I had too. Problem was with the information, which I don't have the whole book, but I got part of the book here in front of me. As I recall, they had the anti-human trafficking attorney working on a whole lot of other programs. I don't need it because I remember this. And I was really surprised to see that, you know, and I would say a good 40% of her work was other than human trafficking programs. So my question at the time is that why then do they want to expand it when they have somebody in that position that's not putting all of her times and energies? And by the way, I think we're very supportive of that program, and I want to take a look at it next year. I know that she also is, with additional tools and additional priorities, is, in fact, they are starting to do more in that area, and we applaud them for that and really encourage them. So I think it's something, I agree with Supervisor Begay, that is a high priority for us. So we want to take a look at that next year, see how she's doing, and how she's expanding, and seeing if there is additional needs in that area. The other is this is one of the areas that there is grant money. So I'm hopeful, and there aren't a lot of grant monies available anymore, but this is one area where there are grant monies available, and I am absolutely sure this county attorney's office is going to be taking advantage of that. So, but that was a question I had too, Supervisor Begay. Just a minute, I want to make sure you've got, Supervisor Begay, any other questions? I want to make sure you, okay. Supervisor Fowler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pulled this because of just the position. It's just really hard cases, complex cases that are going through our system, and we get that report quite a bit. And we try to have people stay out of this, not come back into the system or advance themselves into another state system. So with that, I'm always trying to make sure that our staff are not overworked. We're talking about how it's difficult to hire, and housing is a huge issue, and just the competitiveness and the skill and the education that's needed by our staff, and then people that actually do care, that come to our county. We want to keep them here. And that's the reason why I pulled it. But I understand that I'm really happy that we're having an expanded conversation, because really that's what it's for. That's why I pulled it. I think maybe CJCC, we have that um, in, in place now. Supervisor Horseman and myself serve on there. Maybe what it might be good to do is to really study the system on the capacity of our staff. We want to have all these programs, but how much can we really do? And what kind of staff is really needed? Do we have staff that is in place that is necessary within each department? Which I think we do, but they know their own capacity. But as times change, maybe that's one area that we just need to take a look at. So I understand the our budget limitation this year, but I think we need to keep an eye on all of the workload in our legal system that our staff are having to carry, and make sure that they're not that there are enough, and seeing how else we can do, and hopefully there are grants for it. All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Ontiveros.
Thank you, Chair. If I remember County Attorney Barker's presentation, I believe that the alternative prosecution program was kind of stemming out of the status quo versus transformational change. Am I correct on that assessment? Okay. So I actually found that intriguing. But I also know that 3 members, or actually 4 of the board, have stated that there is no appetite for new programs. But I would just like to say that maybe we could take a look at this as, I realize where we're at, but I would like to learn more about it as we go forward, and maybe see if this is something that we could address next year. So I think that we've already agreed, we'd like to talk about it, we'd like to learn more about it. And I am definitely in that camp, because I thought it was an intriguing idea that he put out.
Supervisor Vasquez.
Yes, as I was listening to everybody and thinking, it occurred to me, is there any way, and maybe not this time, but when we're looking forward to expand that, like, for example, alternative prosecution, maybe we can't do a full FTE, but a 0.5 FTE and split somebody with some other work in the attorney's office, so that way there is that extra help, but it's not a full FTE that we're adding on there. So just something to throw out there, and I don't know if that's possible for this year, but just as you're going through and looking at those adjustments, if that would be possible, because I would go with what Supervisor Fowler was saying of just reevaluating positions within the department and seeing how work can be allocated. Thank you.
I'll yield to Supervisor Begay, but I do have a comment as well.
Okay, so yeah, Supervisor Begay, we'll go to the board first.
Yeah, I just want to say that, I think we did say that the anti-human and also alternative prosecution programs, I think we're kind of, I think we're, as everybody knows, we have a big issue with trafficking, human trafficking, and things are happening to our kids, and people throughout the reservation. We have so many that are listed, where there's that trafficking going on. And then, and of course, I do agree with Supervisor Vasquez about the alternative prosecution programs. And I think that's something that we kind of really need to look at too. Again, like I said yesterday, we got to really be careful to not overwork our employees in the programs or in the department. So making sure, I think this coming year before the next budget session, maybe we could have an evaluation of the staff and see how much workload each employee is doing, and so that we can better, maybe by then we'll have more dollars and more information about funds that might be coming to the county. So I just wanted to reiterate that I think those two programs is something that I, as a supervisor, would like to see happen. But if it's not this time around, maybe we could get somebody to start it at halftime or something, but that we'll leave that up to your consideration and feedback to the board. Thank you.
If you wanted to take a look at just, programs that, probably would be very impactful, I think the pretrial services, which also isn't being covered, is even more impactful than anything else we've talked about here today. And I know we're in difficult budget times, and so I would agree with the comments that my colleagues are making, that we really want a much deeper look into the programs and, quite frankly, who's covering, who's doing what. And I don't think we can do that this time through, but we're obviously, I don't think there are very few employees here that probably don't feel they're already overworked, right? And so we just need a objective review of the various departments and their staffing and what their real staffing needs are. So, and by the way, when we deal with the judicial system, we're having to make sure that it's fair across the whole judicial system. So we aren't just stacking, for example, prosecution versus defense. And then how about probation and adult probation? Then how about juvenile? And then how about, kind of goes on and on and on. And so it really has to be looked at as a system, which is what CJCC has attempted to do. And really, I like Supervisor Fowler's comment that maybe that is something that CJCC should be looking at and taking on before the next budget session. Now, the county manager.
Thank you, Chair Horseman, members of the board. My comments were going to be a bit similar to yours from an administrative perspective. We do have alternative prosecution. And I know you've been to mental health court graduation. So in all of our court graduations, Keaton, who you'll see there, is the attorney in the attorney's office that represents that work for the attorney's office. And I believe that Keaton is funded out of the Pathways program, if I remember correctly. So it speaks to exactly, Chair Horseman, your comments and Supervisor Fowler's comments. They're systemic issues in our community, yes, indeed. Also, the system of criminal justice and how that impacts our court system. Our presiding judge is currently managing one of those courts. Judge Steinlage manages mental health court. And so it really is, and I think when County Attorney Barker addresses transformation, I believe it truly is his vision for the future, and it's a very good one. And it's a very good one for the system at large. And so that Criminal Justice Coordinating Council conversation is probably the most important element in this topic. So I just want to note that we do have programs in place. It's a matter of would we like to expand, and if so, how? And how does that impact the entirety of the system? So thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right. Please continue, Erica.
Thank you, Chair. So another item that we wanted to bring back from our follow-up items was the rural broadband position in IT. You'll recall that this was a 2-year limited term appointment position that was ending at the end of this fiscal year. The department did not request to extend this position, as Mary Knight, as we all know, was incredibly accomplished, and she was very able to accomplish the work that was laid out for that limited term appointment in order to put everyone in a really great position moving forward before she left. And the IT staff has sufficient coverage to manage the remaining work, which is attending meetings and really waiting to see if the BEAD funding will come through. When that funding does come through, it won't come to the county, it will come to the ISP providers. So we just wanted to circle back around on this item that was on the the follow-up items and see if there was any further discussion.
I mean, I'm going to go with what IT said they need and want. And, I know they've done a very good job. And I'm sorry, Mary Knight left us a little early, and I'm sorry she did, but I think she accomplished quite a bit in the 9 months that she was with us. So, and if they're feeling they've got it under control moving forward, I think the heavy lifting has been done. So that's the way I look at it. Any other comments, questions? Supervisor Ontiveros.
Ditto to your comments. Mhm.
Supervisor Vasquez.
Yeah, I agree. Well, on the surface, it looks like there should be that extra support for the broadband. As was stated, it's with the third party, and so the workload is actually a lot lower, and the heavy lifting has been accomplished. So unless IT was asking for this position, I think we're good without it. Thank you.
Please continue.
All right, I think we're ready to head to the next slide.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Begay.
I think Supervisor Fowler.
Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Fowler, I apologize.
Yes, thank you. I pulled this item back to broadband because for several years now, our staff director and the deputy have been carrying several positions because we just didn't have the funding to pay, or else they couldn't hire, had a difficult time hiring those positions. And here's another position that is added on to their workload. Yeah, granted, it's not, it's more of a monitoring and more of a trying to, work with the state, but all that takes time. And because we've been working on broadband for some time now, and just seeing how much work it is and complex it is, and that's what I've been trying to, that's why I pulled this. We have our map, but we still have challenges with the state's plan on rural broadband. And when it comes to rural broadband, we're the last priority. And we just need to make sure that we do keep on top of that. I know that our staff, our director and deputy, they're fully capable of doing so, but I do still get concerned about their the amount of work they have to do. Yes, granted, if we have WECOM that has come in, we have our maps, but that map that was presented to us the last time was still a challenge with the state. And we need to really keep an eye on that, and maybe have our government affairs as well to, I'm sure they're already working with them, but just make sure that they're working as a team. And we as advocates, make sure that we're there at the these working with the state and making sure that our rural broadband, or in our rural broadband and in our county, the broadband is delivered. The Navajo Nation and other tribes, they have their own funding. These are fundings for the county, and most of, we have Flagstaff, but this is really out in the rural communities. So I just wanted to just bring that up, and I understand that we're not going to fund, which is, and it really wasn't so much as funding I was concerned about. It's just really how the distribution of the weight of a position is distributed, and that's the main thing that I was concerned about, or I am concerned about. So thank you, and we'll just really have to work together to make sure that we get the funding that is needed. And we may have to, and we do still need to advocate most likely at the federal level as well on this. We need to not have them, cut us off over there. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor Fowler. Any other comments, questions? Supervisor Begay?
Yes, on here it says that staff have sufficient coverage to manage and remaining work. Who are all the staff, and how much effort is going to be put into the rural broadband?
Thank you, Supervisor Begay. So the director, Matt Fowler, the deputy director, Helen Costello, and then also one of the IT managers, Matt Malik, are all ready and able to help monitor and attend those meetings as we collaborate and gather additional information on the status of the program.
I guess as long as they have the time to do it, then, and we're not being robbed of anything that's coming up from the state, and ensuring that, everything is addressed. And so I just want to ask that question.
Okay, are you ready to move?
I think so. Let's proceed.
Okay. All right, the next item, and I just want to give a little lay of the land. I know we kind of started up from yesterday, just so you all know what is kind of teed up for this morning's wrap up. So we're going to talk now about outside agencies, and we brought back some other information for you. And then, of course, we have invited all of them back on the 27th to make very brief presentations about what they have done with the funding. And they have also, most of them have also submitted written reports that you should all have as well, but they will be, that are all behind your outside agency tab in your book. There are all of the reports that we have received from each of these that the county has funded for long-term funding. So I'll talk about that in a minute. After we do the outside agencies, we do have information to discuss with you about the CDS funding, the congressionally directed spending money, some updates that I know Keith and other staff have been working on to just give you kind of the status of where we're at. And then we'll be looking to just kind of cover what are the future things that we plan to come back at future dates that are not budget dependent in terms of you all making decisions and adopting a balanced budget. And then have wrap up, just final comments regarding the budget process. So that's kind of the lay of what we've got going on with the next upcoming slides.
Are we going to talk about outside agencies now or not?
So yes, I'm going to give an overview of where we are after the discussion that you all had earlier in the week when we talked about this. There had been some, we brought back the slide that you see on the screen is being very specific about what is recommended by the manager's office with respect to the continued funding of these entities. And then if there's any other questions that you all have, happy to try to answer those today. But I just wanted to acknowledge that these agencies are going to be coming in just to give an overview. It's not about discussing their funding and whether or not that it's going to be higher or lower or any of that. It's more for you all. This is the conversation about what is recommended and why it's recommended.
Perfect. And I know one of the things we've talked about in the past, and we kind of get starts and stops and starts and stops, but I think throughout the year, it would be a good thing to utilize, 15, 20 minutes in board meetings for some of our outside agencies to come before us and just to let us know what they're doing, how they're serving our community and the outreach that they're undertaking. So I know that's happened to more or less of a degree, mostly less. So it may be something we want to look at for next year.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree. I think that's definitely something that is helpful. And then these things aren't something that's forgotten about for the year and such. So yes. So with that, you'll see on your screen and also in your handouts, this is these, as NISI had mentioned when we talked about this, I think it was on Wednesday. I'm not sure which day we talked about these initially, maybe just yesterday. These are the programs and operational support that the county has been providing to these specific entities for various reasons throughout the years. Ultimately, it's about entities that provide something to the county that the county does not do for ourselves, if you will, that we don't provide internally. And if you have any specific questions about any of them, I'm happy to try to address them. I do have some longstanding history with most of these. But if you'll just notice across the way, and I know that there had been a request also to do some totals on this, so you can see under the fiscal year 26 recommendations from the manager's office, those amounts to those individual organizations, and then also the United Way funding down below that. And the county has had a longstanding program for the last many years. And this is one of the things I explained on Wednesday, was that this was the county's approach to providing a bucket of money, and to use the terms that we endear, a bucket of money to then put towards their operations, so that other outside nonprofits and agencies can then be able to submit grant applications and this to be able to be funded out of that money that the county is providing directly to support those operations. And then down under the one-time allocations, you'll see kind of the history of what some of those were. And the only thing that is being recommended, because it was a 2-year funding bridge for Elevate Pre-K, is the $35,000 for current fiscal year 26.
And that was a commitment we made last year for the 2-year program, is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Supervisor Vasquez.
So I see there's no CPI increase this time, and so that's intentional, I assume, because of our budgetary constraints. But at least we're giving them the same amount we've given in the past.
Yes, thank you for that question, Vice Chair Vasquez. And you'll see up there that in 24 and 25, in 24 we had adjusted that, and then we kept it at the same amount. So the recommendation is, yes, to continue the amounts from the prior 2 fiscal years, but there will not be any other adjustments this year.
Other question? Supervisor Ontiveros.
Thank you. I'm actually looking forward to having the individual ones come in, because this is really where I have, you indicated you've got a longstanding history. This is brand new to me. And so I'm really, we do not have to make a decision today on this, but I am looking forward to having the agencies come in, because I used the top one when we were during the presentation. I asked about that one. I don't see, it's probably in my packet. It's not in my packet. Okay. Okay.
Yes,
And
they
that's
have not submitted
40,000.
anything, yes.
That's $40,000. And I guess the point that I was making is that, yes, it goes to these agencies, but it's the county's money. And I still think that there needs to be oversight to make sure that the county's money is being spent well by the organizations that we fund. So I think when we have these presentations, I think that's going to go a long ways to answering my questions, and I'm just going to leave it there for now.
Thank you, Supervisor Ontiveros. Yes, I think that is going to be really important in your decisions based off of who comes and presents. We've gotten responses back from most of the agencies that are on the list that they plan to be here. We're still waiting on a response from the Guidance Center if they're going to be here as well. So, and certainly those things should factor in. We need to be accountable to the taxpayers' dollars that we're giving out to these agencies.
Right.
Agreed. Thank you.
Supervisor Begay.
Yeah, and have you considered a date and time that we'll be having them come before us?
Yes, it's on the May 27th agenda in the afternoon. Those agencies will be here.
Okay.
So in 2 weeks.
I think I think some kind of a standard format of reporting would be great, and I just want to see because if funds are not going to be available, and what kind of funds are these?
These are general fund.
General funds, and we're trying to save general fund dollars. But anyway, for I just want to say that yeah, just a standard format, and then the time, and I don't know if only 4 hours would be good enough. You have how many listed here?
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Begay. they have a standard format that they've been asked to follow. Again, we are asking for brief presentations because your time is valuable, everyone's time is valuable. They have submitted written, with the exception of, I think we're just missing one at this point. So I would encourage all of you to look at those. We can certainly forward them back out to you because they have all submitted a report that they followed a format that we had given them, and we have given them a format for their presentations when they come in person, and we've asked them to be very brief to answer some very specific questions about the use of the funds and who they serve, and so that they can be succinct and so that you are able to hear from all of them, but they are not going to be long, extended presentations. There'll be a quick standard protocol for them to follow, and then time allowed for you to ask some questions of each of them.
You know, and the only thing I'm going to say is this: first of all, there has to be accountability. And, you know, one of the reasons for our partnership with these outside agencies is because they are able to serve our communities in ways that we as the county cannot. And that we as the board have felt that these are appropriate and are important. And that's why we have entered into these types of partnerships with these other agencies. But they need to be accountable that the money that we are allocating is in fact well spent and is helping various parts of our communities all across the communities. You know, they may be specialized in a particular area, but are they helping, you know, a faction or parts of our communities that we want to make sure are covered and are served? And I think most of these we have had extensive relationships with. Most of these, and some of them have even provided us their written documentation. It really shows that they are more than serving our communities in the ways that we are partnering. We are not paying for all of this. We are paying for a very, very small part of their programming that they're providing to our communities in the county. So, you know, I think some of them speak for themselves. You know, FACTS at Loop School, the NAPTA operations, you know, it's Children's Youth and the Coalition of Youth and Children, you know, just, you know, longtime partnerships that we've had. But they need to come back and meet with us and showing us what they are doing. So I agree with Supervisor Ontiveros. We need that kind of accountability. And we look forward to talking with them. And if 4 hours isn't enough, you know, well, we may have to just, you know, expand it or extend it. And then I'm going to ask again that throughout the year, we can pick you know, 20 minutes, a half hour on our board meetings and dedicate that for the Coalition for Youth and Children, having them come and present to us. And the same with Mountain Line, the same with NAPTA, you know, so anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. Any other comments, questions? Supervisor Fowler, you've got your hand raised.
Thank you. I agree with the conversation, and their times have changed also, and that we really need to make sure that we still need these partners, and also we've started programs like the youth center that we're working on. Health department has opened up we have a division in behavioral health. Are these departments, these programs, are they still needed? Have we taken those on internally with these new programs? We hired an economic development director. These were in partnership when we didn't have an economic development director. So how are they working together? And are these? We just need to make sure that their partnership is there, the collaboration is there, and how is that made out? And then United Way used to provide service throughout Coconino County. I used to be on the United Way board. Now, with the focus that changed nationally and here, I think the programs have shrunk to Flagstaff. I'm very supportive of United Way, and all the things that these programs do, but I think we really need to look at to see if they're providing services even throughout the whole county, not just centralized in Flagstaff. Granted, the population is there, but the lack of service in rural communities are real. And we need to somehow help the rural communities with these same programs that we are in partnership with. Thank you.
Supervisor Vasquez.
Yes, thank you. It's good to see all the different organizations that we're supporting in the community. I do agree with Supervisor Fowler. It does seem very Flagstaff heavy, and obviously 60% of our population is here, so that's part of the reason. But we do need to look for ways that we can get some of those services out further in the rural areas because it's so necessary. One of the things that I just wanted to note and maybe have these organizations talk about a little bit when they come is, when we do not add for CPI, which I understand why we're not doing. What does that mean when you're running a program? When minimum wage goes up, let's say, right? So now I remember when I ran my after school programs and minimum wage went up, it meant I had less teachers because I have a finite amount of money to spend on salaries, and now that's decreased. Now these numbers aren't huge, so I don't think a full salary is being paid out of here, but I am curious to hear from these organizations some of those impacts by not getting the CPI, and what are those things that are increasing, that are making it more difficult for them to provide services. I do look forward to hearing from the organizations, and I do hope that we can have more frequent visits from the different organizations. I mean, we have how many meetings a year? It wouldn't be too hard to assign one each year to each group or each meeting to come in and present to us. But overall, I'm supportive of the funding. I know this is in line with balancing our budget, and so we have to take the full county approach to make sure that we're addressing everything. But I am encouraged that we are providing these services and providing this funding to these organizations in our community. Thank you.
County Manager.
Thank you, Chair Horseman, members of the board. Thank you for the conversation. We do have on May 27th outside agencies coming to present to you to address how are these funds being expended. Siri reminded us, she has a note on her calendar also to bring these agencies back in the fall as well. And I think that this was something that you had asked for last year, if I remember correctly, that we have those check-ins and follow-up conversations with the agencies that are providing the services. So we'll ensure that we get those on your working calendar to have those conversations as well.
And I really am hopeful, and I know that we haven't even opened up our youth behavioral center, but I'm looking forward to that, by the way. And I really have been very encouraged by the partnership we're seeing within Coconino County and our departments. How we have HHS working with our superintendent of schools, and hopefully they'll also be working with United Way, Children, Youth, and Families, that kind of partnership, because there are uniquenesses in the services that they're providing, but there's a lot of overlap and similarities. And the whole idea is to try to extend and expand, and not to have different agencies doing the same thing. So I think that'll be very good for us when we have a discussion on this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I would just, to kind of just wrap this part of the conversation, one of the things that, and I think that's a great question to ask the organizations when they come in terms of who they are working with internally with county departments, because I look up at this list and I know that many of them are working with multiple departments across the county in various ways. But I did want to just address Supervisor Vasquez's comment about, what the funding is going to. And what I would just point out is the funding that the county gives to each of these are just a little piece that is part of other entities that are also contributing, and other governmental entities that are contributing to each of these things. And I'll give you an example. The Coalition for Youth and Children, that was something that that was part of an alliance agreement way, way back. And for those of you who are familiar with what the alliance is with respect to NAU, CCC, FUSD, the county, the city, I know I'm forgetting someone. And so each of those entities are contributing to what that mission is and to funding that. So these are definitely just little pieces of money that come into these organizations that they then leverage for other things. But I think those are great questions to ask them. And certainly as we have them come back throughout the year, I think then they would have more time to expand on some of that.
And I want to underscore that, and I said this again, but I'm going to underscore it again. Look at the numbers. These organizations are not living off our contributions. It is a very small part of a contribution to them to serve the communities. And by the way, they are not, because we are 688 square miles, right around in there. You know, we are not all across, and nor are these organizations all across those 18,686 or 88 square miles. It's what populations are they serving? So if they may be based out of Williams, are they serving a larger population or communities than just Williams? And I think the same as Flag or Page for that matter. And they aren't going to be all across, but are they serving a communities or population that we want to make sure are being served? And I think that's the key to me is, are they serving Coconino County and the various communities in Coconino County? And they probably aren't going to serve all of them, but is it a substantial enough in providing what we need to serve a large or group of people that otherwise are not being served? And I think that's why we entered into these partnerships. We are entering a time period where these services are probably going to be needed now more than ever. With the cuts in federal funds, and a lot of these nonprofits, quite frankly, did receive a lot of grant money and federal funding. They aren't going to receive that anymore. So, and I think the needs do nothing but grow. Isn't that what we're seeing? I mean, we all are asking ourselves, why we're doing so much? Why is the need still growing? And I think we're going to even see that more. But we want to make sure our dollars are being well spent. That is our responsibility as this board. So we appreciate your help in making sure that we've got the information before us and we get ongoing communication with them, acknowledging that we are a small part of their overall operating budget. So thanks. Supervisor Begay.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking here that, the rural aspects of it, and as of areas served, I think we will need to make sure that that's happening, even though, you know, we're limited here and there, but, you know, but we're part of, we donate as part of the money, and then everybody else, whoever contributes to the pot, I think they all have the same common goals, you know, to spend the dollars. But I think, you know, thank you for, you know, setting up the May 27th date, and then also the CPI issue. From what I'm looking here with the presentation document, 24, 25, and 26, all of them are going to remain the same amounts. And no CPIs were using any of those, right?
So thank you, Supervisor Begay. Back in fiscal year 24, those adjustments were made and for an increase, and we have stayed with that for fiscal year 24 and 25, and the recommendation is to stay with that in 26. And again, that is because we know that we have limited resources, and in terms of putting together a balanced budget for the board's consideration, that is where we are with that. And again, I just would reiterate, this is not about funding their entire programs. And when they do come back next on the 27th, this is not an opportunity we really want to hear from them about what they have done with the money we have given them, not about what other monies they need from us, because we know everyone needs additional resources. But this is about the pieces that the county has contributed to over the years in terms of helping provide some stability to some specific entities that provide certain things to the county. And this, again, absolutely is not all inclusive of everything that and all the services that the county contributes to in various ways. And I would just also point out there's been lots of funding that you all do through CI, that has been through the ARPA program, through HHS grants that they get from the state and other places, that they're able to actually give money to other private nonprofits throughout the county to provide money, and the county is the pass-through entity for that money. So there's a lot of funding that comes together to help support our private nonprofits and those entities that provide services that we honestly can't do it all as the county. We know that. And so we work really hard, and our departments work really hard to leverage and to actually bring in those outside agencies. So this is just a little snapshot of some longstanding things that were set up for other different kinds of reasons that you'll be able to hear from each of them when they come in 2 weeks. So thank you.
Supervisor Vasquez.
Yes, thank you. First off, I was just curious, so they know not to come in and ask for more money because we're not there, right?
Well, I mean,
I don't want to be the bad guy.
We have given them direction in terms of the protocol that we want them to follow. And yes, asking for additional funds is not part of that, what we've asked them to do. Again, we only can, I can only turn on and off the microphone at the podium. So
I know. No, it's okay. The real
I don't control what comes out of people's mouths. Sorry, it's Friday and it's been a long couple of weeks, right? So
No, I just think it's really important that, we understand the relationship that these agencies have with our different departments. And you had mentioned earlier of looking that up and seeing that. That would be really helpful to have a graphic of such to kind of show that web of interrelationships between these organizations and our county departments, because that's how we get a lot of our work done. Like you said, this is a multiplier effect right here. We partnering with them and contributing part of their administration allows them to be able to work with our county departments and expand their services. And that's what we need, because like you said, we can't do it all. So if we could get some kind of graphic that shows that relationship between different departments and these organizations, that would be really helpful, because then that just goes to solidify and show just how strong that relationship is with our departments.
yeah, thank you, Supervisor Vasquez or Vice Chair Vasquez. What I will say is, because we're under some pretty short timelines, I don't know that is something we'll see what can be put together. But I do think that's important, that as we have them back throughout the year, that is a great time to really have them expand on what those relationships are and who they are working with throughout the county departments as well as the communities. Thank you. But we'll see what we
Sure.
can have them provide. Thanks.
Supervisor Begay.
I think last year we had the same conversation, having them come before us at one point in time. Even I think it was mentioned during the budget session. Now we're going to be doing the same thing again. So I think we really need to get some information on the 27th that's kind of like concrete, and instead of just coming back in later and then trying to get information to us. So I just feel that we've had this topic here last year about having them come before us and see what they're serving, the numbers and all this and that. So we're doing that again, and now it's budget crunch time again. So appreciate that.
I know it's probably like, kicking a dead horse to death or something, but I'm going to just say this. A long time ago, I was involved with a number, and I have been over the years, of a number of nonprofits. One of the things I always found was so interesting is that we received a small sum of money from an organization or government entity, and for some reason, it was that they owned us. And I want to make it clear that this is a very small amount of their overall budget. And it is because we see a value in joining with them and partnering with them on the programs that they offer our communities. So I want to make that clear, because I have to tell you how much I used to resent it sitting on these boards, that we've worked so hard and spent so much of our time and so much professionals working with us to develop the programs and develop what we were able to provide, the programs we were able to provide to the community. And then having somebody who gave us $5,000 tell us what we were supposed to do. And I think that instead, our approach is, what do we need to have to serve our communities? Are they able to do that? Do we want to partner with them so that they can continue to do that? So just want to make that clear, because I can't tell you how much I resented it when, working on over the years on nonprofits. So, and Lena, I see you, Supervisor Fowler, your hand is raised.
Thank you. And you're so right. I come from the nonprofit world also, and it was really frustrating. It's nonprofit is very stressful work. But on the other hand, we all these agencies, as well as our county manager, and everyone knew that this is our budget season. Everybody knew that this is when we're going to be asking for budget. I don't know why these agencies could not produce the information during our budget season. It should just be automatic. Things change, programs change, their focus and their mission change. Just like we've been going through change in Coconino County, our agencies, many years, every department changes, and trying to see how we can improve, be more efficient, and our residents change, their needs change. So that's why I think that, these agencies should be ready, and we should be able to get the information on who they're serving, where these people live, and what kind of services. Have their approach changed? Do they need more funds from the county, and how can we help them? Those are things that we're looking at. It's not just to do away with them. It's just really to understand and make sure that they're still there as a strong partner that we want. Is there another agency out there that can do a better job? That's the other thing. We don't ever look for any other agencies that can help us. So those are things that I think we look at when we look at these agencies. It's not just to take them apart. We just want to make sure they're still there working with us. And how have they changed? What's their, federal funding? Maybe it's really so bad that they're going to really struggle, and they have to tell us, we can't do this out here anymore. We got to be right here until we ride this wave. Well, that's understandable. And those are things that we're just looking for. Do we need to advocate for them out there? And where do we need to advocate? Is that the state? Is that the federal level? That's the information I'm looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fowler. Kim.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Supervisor Fowler. I just, again, would like to draw your attention. We do have written reports that address a lot of the things that I know you are already asking about. So I would really encourage you, we will package them back together, and we will send those back out via email so that you'll have them in your box, so that you can preview those in advance of the 27th, because they did, for almost every single one of them, did submit a written report that addresses the things that you are asking. And so I would encourage you all to preview those in advance of their brief presentations that they're going to do on the 27th, but certainly understand the ask of the board to have additional information. And just again, that reminder of, these are very small amounts with respect to their budgets. And I too spent over 5 years running a private nonprofit. And so it is really difficult to, be asked to, it's absolutely appropriate to be asked to provide a written report and a summary of what you do. But when it's specific to the dollars, I think what we should understand is that these are all dollars in these small amounts that are used to leverage additional funding that these agencies get. And so I think this has been a really great conversation and discussion, and I really appreciate the feedback. And we will be reaching back out to our partners, and we'll be sending you those reports that we have again, just so that you have time to preview them. Because I think they answer a lot of the questions that you've been asking and want to know about them in those brief written summaries that they have provided us. And it is an expectation. And so that's why when final decisions are made, if there are entities that have not met that criteria, then that is a decision point about the recommendation about continued funding. Absolutely.
The alcohol stabilization unit, which is almost $40,000, I have not seen anything from there, and that's a significant amount of money. It's the second largest sum of money we've given any of the nonprofits. So it certainly sounds like something we want to be involved in, but without knowing what it is and what they're doing and what the results are and who they're serving, and it's very hard to have that up as a recommendation.
Agreed. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, well, we look forward to the discussion with them on the May 26th, and look forward to May 27th. May 27th. Okay. Siri.
It's going to be
So-
Keith. I'm just helping
Yeah,
with some
she's-
handouts.
So Chair, as the next piece is to move into congressionally directed spending. I don't know what it's about 10 o'clock. I don't know where you are on if there's any break or anything needed, but we're ready to keep rolling. And
Let's go forward. Keith, you got money for us?
And Chair Horseman, members of the board, we, as we've been going through the budget discussions, you will note that there are multiple departments and projects that have congressionally directed spending that is part of a future plan or a current plan. And so we have been working with staff to gather kind of a more solid picture of where we're at with the funding that has been awarded. Has it been obligated? Do we have a signed agreement? Have we received the money? As you are all fully aware, it's tricky to navigate some of this in terms of where it is and getting people to respond to us because of different reductions in staff and departments at the federal level. But I think we're in a position to have Keith share with you kind of where we're at and the things that we're still looking at gathering. So with that, ready to turn it over to Keith?
Good morning, Chair Horseman and board. Yeah, so happy to bring an update. I think we're possibly in a little better spot than we might have thought we were a few days ago in terms of this. So there's probably some good news. I think the more I explore this, I find out the more I learn, the less I know about congressionally directed spending, but we're making progress. So what I found out is I think on the front end, we've been exceptionally good at jumping through the hoops and getting money obligated. But then in terms of following up, figuring out where the money that's already obligated has been more of a challenge. And that's really fallen on the departments. And our departments are working very hard to get that information or to get agreements signed and to get work done. And I'm glad some of them are here. So in case they ever need to provide more context than what I can have, they're happy to step forward and I think take the mic. At least I know facilities is, I don't want to put the other people on the spot, but they're here and they may wish to, if it comes to that. But I think the best way to look at this.
One thing would be good
ahead.
to have you put the departments in here. I pretty much know them, like, for
Oh,
example,
sure.
but
Okay.
if you notice, like, for example, Fort Tidio, that's Parks and Rec. And I remember that was Senator Kelly. That was really cool. He even came up for a photo op on that. But the point is, it would be good to put that in, which departments are really responsible for overseeing this.
Yeah,
So-
that's a good point. We can add that. And at any time too, if anybody wants to go into really deep, go past congressionally directed spending 101 to graduate level courses, come into my office because I can go through the matches and all this stuff at sort of getting into the weeds level. But I think to make it simpler for the people viewing and for the board for understanding, I think it's good to look at the CDS as kind of the way your handout is. It's just the 2 pages. The front page is FY23 and FY24. Those are all the requests that have been obligated. It doesn't necessarily mean the money's on the ground being spent, but those are the obligated. And then on the back page,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
So
Sorry.
who, Coconino County Tribal Nation Service Center, signed agreement, no. Who is responsible for overseeing that?
So the facilities management is our department working on that, and that it's USDA grant. And where the obstacle has been is that USDA has been pretty non-responsive. But the good news is they did respond this week. And I don't know if Tom wants to share something.
Madam Chair?
On that, or go ahead.
Supervisor Fowler.
Thank you. Keith, it might be good to explain just to remind us how these congressional funding works. We apply. Is it from Congress? Is it all of our Arizona congressional delegations? Where do these funding comes from? Is it from their office, or how does that work? Just for an explanation for a bigger picture, that's all. Thank you.
Sure, I can give a brief overview of what that is. So congressionally directed spending are appropriations that back in the old days, they used to call them earmarks, but that had a little bit of a negative connotation because sometimes people were, whatever, helping out developers or whatever. But there's a bunch of stipulations now that prevent that kind of thing. And so what it is funding that is directed specifically to projects within a member of Congress's district, and they could be brought forward by a city, a county, a tribe, in some cases nonprofits, and things specific that in the appropriations budget can be used to fund particular projects. And so they'll go through the different departments, and there's a narrow range of departments and a narrow range of types of projects that will be considered. They're mostly sort of infrastructure type projects that the local communities can't afford to fund by themselves. Like if you're a small town and you need a $15 million bridge replacement, the town can probably come up with it and the state can't. So you can ask the members of Congress, but it comes in the appropriations budget. You can request from any individual member and they will support some of the projects. But in our experience, our success has been primarily with our 2 US senators, with Kelly and Sinema, the past senator, but Gallego has also supported our projects. And also we've had support from previous Congressman O'Halloran and then Congressman Gallego on some of the projects. So individual members will champion or put particular projects in there. And Sinema was particularly helpful because she was on the appropriations committee. So she had a lot of, I guess, clout there in terms of getting her projects in, but they get submitted from all around the country. Any other questions?
Supervisor Ontiveros, this may be new to you, so I
Yeah,
think the
it
rest
is.
of us have gone through this. So if you have questions, please.
Well, I actually think I sort of understand it, yeah, but I know I will enroll in your graduate class, Keith,
Sure.
should I have other questions. But it's my understanding that Congressman Crane does not do congressionally directed spending. Am I correct with that?
That is correct. Our congressman philosophically believes that this isn't an appropriate function of Congress, so he will not champion an individual project within his district or within another district. He will work sometimes for grants that are already allocated to see them through the finish line, but he's not. If it was up to him, congressionally directed spending wouldn't exist, and I think he goes back maybe to when they had the tradition of earmarks, is maybe thinking that's wasteful spending or their pet projects for the districts. The way they reformed congressionally directed spending, I think some of those concerns aren't necessarily warranted in the way they were, but there is a different philosophy. And sometimes you see it at the state too, where one state senator will want to hand out individual projects to the districts, but then in the House, Representative Livingston kind of thinks that's a bad practice and you should just have a overarching budget and then have the departments allocate the money. So it's a philosophical issue, but yeah, but he's in a very different place than the previous congressman who represented here, who would sign on to projects within his district.
So other than Congressman Crane, are there any others that serve us that have that same philosophical view?
Not sure, possibly Biggs and Ghosts are in the state, but not that serve our district.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah.
All right, so I interrupted you. I wanted to go through fiscal year 2023, since you can see most of those have been approved and had signed agreements, so the money can be considered in the bank. We'd really like to get that Tribal Service Center from 2023 sewn up if we can.
We do have an update, and so Tom will share that because he did get some information from USDA.
All right, Tom, thank you.
Thank you and good morning.
Do you have money for us?
You know, I heard June of this year, so things are looking good. If I can just spend a couple minutes specifically with this appropriation running through the USDA, really the way the process works is once Congress approves it, we are tasked to work with USDA, specifically the Rural Development Program. They had some staffing turnover a couple of years ago. And what happened with that is the new staff interpreted their rules differently, which triggered multiple studies for us to do to apply for the grant. And the grant in this case is the appropriation, but we still had to go through the process. We submitted that paperwork last April. They said the review process would take 9 months, and we're on month 13 right now. We did just hear yesterday, though, that there's additional delays because of the Department of Government Efficiency. Requires a couple extra hoops for USDA to jump through to release that money to Coconino County.
Even though it's two
Correct, yeah.
fiscal years previously.
Correct, yeah. They've also had staffing cuts at the beginning of this calendar year when the new presidential administration took over, which also delayed a few months also. They have folks from other states, technical advisors from other states that are helping out in Arizona. So what we were told yesterday was June of this year that the appropriation is going to be released to Coconino County for this project.
So it is going to be released.
That's what we heard yesterday from our contact of June. But I'm
That's
not holding my breath for any of this because this process has taken a long time. Staffing turnovers and other disruptions in their process have definitely delayed this for multiple years. But we will update you as soon as we know.
Thank you, Tom.
I think June for money on the ground is probably maybe too optimistic because they did ask for a few more. They're going to go through some more processes and ask some more questions. But what they did say is that the money is secure. So it's kind of a checks in the mail. But I don't know if the money will be on the ground in June. But I do feel much better about the Tribal Nation Service Center money, having heard that USDA is still committed to releasing the money after those extra steps are taken. And we have kind of heard they were pretty frank in their response to him that they did mention the Doge issue. And I know in talking to our federal lobbyists too, a whole bunch of grants, including some of the congressionally directed spending stuff, did get sort of frozen up for re-review because of that Department of Government Efficiency stuff. But on a more positive note, all the ones that they have reviewed, there haven't really been any that have been rejected. I think Bob said they've reviewed about 1,000 projects. And so while they've created delays, they generally haven't been rejecting projects, or as far as he knows, they haven't rejected any yet.
But
So
make
it's
it clear,
slower.
it's 2023's money. 'Cause
Correct.
there's two
Yep.
there's two requests that we're talking about. So for 2023, we have one outstanding, and we hope that will be coming forthwith. And they've promised June, so maybe if we get it somewhere in the next few months. So keep
Yeah,
us,
that's right. And that the only thing that secures the 2023 funding on that, because everything that we submitted in FY25 and resubmitted in FY26, none of that has been obligated. So we're hopeful that that gets re-obligated, so to speak. But so far, the only thing is that FY23 and 24 requests have been obligated, and they're in different stages. And the Tribal Nation Service Center was the one I think we had the most questions about. So getting that clarity was really good this week. And then the one that I think we had the two that seem really secure that we seem to understand where they are, if I'll scroll down, are the FY24 ones, the forest funding and the emergency management enhancements. We have a pretty good understanding of where they are. The Fort Tuthill one at the top, we had some questions on where that was, but same situation there. We got clarity there that I think it's a reimbursement grant, so we haven't
It
received
is.
any funding, but it's because we haven't sent them any invoices or we haven't spent the money yet. So, but it seems to be in a good place, or haven't spent all the money. I don't know. Did I clarify?
We
say
should
that right,
check with
Pam?
Parks and Rec. Let's get follow-up with all the departments on this. So if we definitely want it to take that money and spend it as quickly as we can so that we don't lose it. So, all right, and
Yep.
you want to talk about 25 and 26, and I interrupted you. Supervisor Fowler, I saw you had your hand up. Do you have any questions on FY23 or 24, or should we let him go forward on 25 and 26?
Yeah, I'll ask at the end. Thank
Okay, thanks.
If I could just to back up for just a second about the Fort Tuthill water and sewer improvements. So the reason that we have, we cannot start that project until environmental assessment is done. And that is being slowly walked with our other partners that have to do that. And I think it's the Corps of Engineers. So there's some, yeah, so some of that takes a long time to get there, but we absolutely want to move this forward. It is in that environmental study process. And it is being finalized now with the Corps of Engineers. Now, they've been telling us that for a while. When I meet with Cynthia, we have a standing kind of list of things, and she says, still with the Corps, still with the Corps. They, both Liz and Cynthia are constantly urging them to get it to the finish line. So that is where that stands. So
And
thanks.
I should add the new partner at Nexus Consulting, Tracy Sutton, has a longstanding relationship with the Army Corps. And I talked to them yesterday, and she was going to reach out to them to see if she could rattle their cage or nudge them a little. So we might have an accelerator and speed there. I don't want to promise anything because with the government, you never know exactly what's going to happen. But I think that should be in good shape. It's just we have different speeds of the department, so that's really slow. So I think just staying on the 23 and 24 to point out, like, in terms of different speeds, the digital transformation money did get on the ground, and we've spent 85% of that, and we'll have it all spent by the end of September. So that was one congressionally directed spending request that we didn't get a lot of delays on the other end, so we were able to do our work and put the money to use. And we're kind of in the same, maybe in a similar boat with the FY24 request, where on both the emergency management request and the wildfire prevention project money, we know that work is being done on the ground, that those are reimbursement grants as well, or at least the emergency management one is. So, but they have no concerns about getting reimbursed once they do the work there. And the wildfire prevention grants, that money goes to the Forest Service, and that's the two separate projects, the Lowell Section 17 project and then the Campbell Peaceful Way projects. But other than an invoice that we submitted for $8,000, and I don't totally understand what that is specifically, but the rest of the money goes to the Forest Service, not to the county directly. But they have no concerns about that money being released. So the FY24 requests look to be in pretty good shape. And then moving to FY25 and FY26, as I think we've mentioned in our updates in these meetings probably a few times, but I'll mention it again just to be clear. So we submitted 5 projects in FY25, but because Congress did not pass an FY25 budget, they passed a continuing resolution that expires at the end of September, and there won't be an FY25 budget. I think the one they're working on now would be an FY26 budget that they're doing through reconciliation. None of those projects got funded. In fact, congressionally directed spending cannot be funded through a continuing resolution. So those did not get funded. And so what we did is we just did the inflationary costs and put them into our FY26 requests. So those requests were all resubmitted. There's different prices and different matches on some of those because of the inflation. The digital transformation one that we had, we just kept the cost flat. We didn't do an inflationary thing. And then I think the sheriff's departments switched their request a little bit and made some changes to theirs. So they're actually requesting less than what they were awarded last year, as far as I could tell. But any questions on the FY25 or FY26?
And Keith, just want to clarify the difference between FY25 and 26. It's the inflationary cost included, and we included that under advisement, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
They recommended that we include that. And I should say many of those projects were approved by the senators and were ready to be approved in the appropriations package. And our guidance was that in FY26, that they would prioritize FY25 projects that had already gone through those steps of being recommended. They would prioritize those ahead of any new submissions, like if people submitted something new. Now, they could say that, and whether they actually stick with that is up to them. But our guidance was that that was the route they would go. So we should feel, if they do pass a budget in FY26, we should feel pretty good about our projects because they were all supported by one of our senators or the Appropriations Committee in the previous round. So they've already kind of done all their vetting and deciding they're worthy projects. And when we resubmitted them, we essentially sent the same material other than the price changes.
Supervisor Vasquez.
Yeah, I see here that the joint EOC facility is on both for 25 and 26. You explained why already. But for some reason, I thought that project had already started, that the reconstruction over the public works yard had begun. Is that piece just not going to be built until the funding comes in, or what's the status on that?
Thank you for the question, Supervisor Vasquez. Ultimately, what we're doing here, we do have general fund allocations for these projects. We're submitting for federal funding to help, if approved, help reduce the burden on the general fund.
I'm gonna bring him with me next time I order food because he explains things so well. Yeah. Any other questions?
You've answered my questions. Supervisor Beguer.
Madam Chair?
Lena? I'm sorry, Supervisor Fowler.
Yes, thank you. So yesterday during the NACO meetings, I mentioned that the movement now is to eliminate all DEI initiatives and also grants that they're reviewing all grants through the eyes of the DEI as well. So any of these, I don't know how these wordings were worded, and if they fall in that the language that is that unacceptable language and initiative, they may be rejected. So I'm hoping that none of our programs fall in that category. You know, when I don't know how they're really looking at the Tribal Nations Service Center. Hopefully that is not falling in that category. As we know, for a while there, Navajo Code Talkers became a DEI, even though that is the tribes are not DEI. But just want to mention that. And it's just really, here we are all through our budget, uncertain times, and this is how this is with these programs. Just want to thank our senators for always supporting us and being there. And making on-site visits to understand our needs. And that's how these grants come about and these requests. Thank you.
Thank you Supervisor Fowler. I think that's many of our concerns. If it has anything to do with things that we consider part of keeping the diversity and the strength of our communities together, it may in fact be questioned. We hope that won't be the case. Certainly our senators have been supportive, and hopefully we can continue to get their advocacy on that.
I think what I can do on that is I'll reach out to Joe Russell at the senator's office and just look at if we have language in there that might get flagged. I don't know, certain terms like resilience or something is, those kind of buzzwords. And because I think obviously the one that people may have concerns about is the Tribal Nations Services Center, but I do think it also provides services to rural communities. And if the language is right in the way it's written, it may not be as big of a problem as people expect, or it's something that we'd have to look at, but I don't know in the language of the grant.
Yeah, Keith, you might want to look at, have everybody look at all the applications just to, I don't know what the buzzwords that they look for, but just to make sure. Thanks.
Yeah, Supervisor Fowler, this is Tom. We'll definitely take a look at that. We have not had any indication from our counterparts at USDA that there was any concern with the language in our application, because it is core county services, is the intent of the facility.
Thank you.
We continue to reach out to our senators and for their advocacy in getting this done. It's really important for us that we can get this money committed so that we can commence.
And then kind of going back on that one to what Bob Holmes has said about the grants that they've reviewed so far, is that they haven't been rejecting them. So they've been slowing them down, and there may be a lot of show up there to say that they're looking at DEI, but when it comes to grants that have already been approved so far, it's been maybe, I don't want to guess, because maybe further down or maybe the more controversial ones are still in review, but so far it's been a little more bark than bite as far as cutting into those grants that have already been approved. It may be very different for new grants, but they may be pushing them through, but very slowly. But we'll have to keep an eye on it because I can't predict the future. I can only say what I've heard so far.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. We appreciate
very
the
much.
update.
Okay, Siri will be switching the presentation. Yeah. See, you're powerless with that clicker. Kim. But we're about to give you the power back. So next up, we have future discussion items. And so we have the follow-up items. Kim's going to lead us through that. We just wanted to touch base with you on those items that came up during the budget discussions, and our intention to address that as we go along in the process. You got it, Siri? Here we
All
are.
right.
Yep. Thank you, Kim.
Yes. So we were able to provide you obviously the congressionally directed spending update. We weren't sure if we were going to have that gathered in time. So we'll put a check mark by that, but with the understanding that there will be future updates needed to you all. I know one of the other discussions from the last 2 weeks is that federal impacts report. And I just want to point out that there were, in your materials, each department there were indications of what those federal impacts are, department specific. Staff is actually putting together one report for you all so that you'll be able to see that kind of across the organization. Continue to get updates. I just received another update from Director Michelle Axlin about HHS and other federal impacts that they're anticipating, and some additional cuts with respect to potentially our public health emergency preparedness. It looks like there's some other issues around WIC again, but these things continue to change, as you all know. And so we're going to continue to update you as those things happen, and I'll be happy to send and forward that out from Michelle as well. And then Superintendent of Schools Bridge Fund Management. I know that there was conversation about wanting to talk further about that, and just with our superintendent of schools. And then also some legal review of accommodation school statutes, that's some follow-up that we'll be doing as the manager's office. Also on this list, and I know, Chair, you brought this up earlier today, is that adult probation pretrial funding review. So getting them back in the future. Of course, our WIOA shared governance agreement, that's something that is in its final stages that we're hoping to get resolved, so that we actually are going to get that on a very future agenda to get before you. And then certainly future conversations, as I heard you all say, from WIOA, as well as updates. And then the recording notification system from the recorder's office. I know that was something that was mentioned when they were presenting. And then the elections community precinct task force. So these are future follow-up items that, these are things that we will kind of weigh what is the best way to get you information. Are these things that need to be on a work session? Some of them absolutely. Others, is it information we can get out to you in different ways, whether it's either in writing or in some individual meetings with you as well. So we'll kind of manage that as we go along, so that we can make sure that you have the information that you have requested.
We have an additional one that we talked about today, and that is to take a
Yes.
look across the whole criminal justice system on, funding requests and on job. Are there some job duties that are basically being overtaxed? And do we need to be looking at certain changes across the whole criminal justice system?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We'll make sure that that gets added. These were created yesterday, and anything else that may come out of conversation, but just wanted to kind of review that with you all. So if there's other questions or comments.
Supervisor Ontiveros.
Thanks, Chair. And you were talking about having CJCC kind of
Mm-hmm.
holistically. Yeah, I think that's a really good oversight to have them do that. I completely concur.
I do too. At least start it.
Okay, if there's no other questions about that, we're going to move on, if you're good with that.
So far, so good. Let's go on.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to turn it over because my little song and dance is over for today, I think. So I'll turn this back over to Andy and then Siri for the next steps. We're getting close.
Yes, second to the last slide, Chair and members of the board. So that's very exciting. So this is just to recap a slide from the first day. It's not very obvious on here, but bolded is May 5th through May 16th, which is where we are on the tail end of that. So just as a reminder, you will still see a few things that are related to budget on the agenda. You will see the tentative budget adoption on June 3rd. And then on June 24th is a little bit longer of a meeting where we have the truth and taxation hearings and final budget, where we go in and out of every district and individually adopt all of the individual budgets for our special districts. And then our fiscal year will start. And then in August, we will adopt tax rates for all of the taxing entities that show up on the tax bill. But just one item of note is that we will start doing the official schedules that are required for adoption, and we have to publish those in the newspaper along with truth and taxation hearings. And so we did discuss in the opening date that we will include in those truth and taxation notifications some information for taxpayers that explains the tax rate decrease and explains our tax rates a little bit more than just what the official legal notice is required to provide. So we will make sure and include that when it gets published, but it does go in the Daily Sun. It also goes in our website, and we have some press releases we are required to do in order to get to the point of budget adoption. So we just didn't want any surprises there as those start hitting the newspaper as a result of our discussions over the last few weeks.
Wrap up. Final comments. I'll leave the final comments to you, members of the board. I just want to say this is a example of good democratic decision making over the last 2 weeks with with great departments, a great board, And so thank you for allowing us to present to you, and thank you for your leadership in the process.
Thank you, County Manager. And I'm just gonna get some comments, wrap-up comments from my board members. Any wrap-up comments?
And, okay.
Supervisor Ontiveros.
All right. Well, I know I said this before, but I'm going to say it again. I was warned about these 2 weeks of budgets. And again, I don't know specifically what in my mind I was prepared for, but this process has been far easier. I mean, it has been long. I mean, and it has been a lot of work, and but it was not as bad as I thought it was. And I think it really goes to the management, to what you guys have done on the front end. I think you guys did a lot of the heavy lifting for us, from what I can tell. And so by the time it got to us, we were able to ask the questions that we have. So I'm going to start by saying that I very much appreciate that. I think this was a good process. The questions that I have asked are all been out there. I will just state that I completely agree that as an example, having the alternative prosecution reviewed and talked about with CJCC. And really the only other outstanding thing for me is the outside agencies. And just to sum that up, basically, what do you do and have you spent the money? I mean, it's as simple as that when they come in here on May 27th. Maybe just that one that we were talking about, it is a $40,000 contra or donation or whatever contribution that we make. And I do think that there may be just a little bit there that needs cleaned up for me. But other than that, I'm okay. I survived. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're glad to see that.
As I am too.
So far, we haven't lost a supervisor to a budget meeting yet. Supervisor Begay.
First of all, I want to thank the administration for really working with their staff, and getting the information together and present it to the board. And certainly, we talk about balanced budgets and all other considerations to see how we can best utilize the funds, various funds, to help us to come up with a plan, for the next year's budget. And I greatly appreciate that. And then again, there's the issue regarding the what Tammy had mentioned earlier, the second to the last slide we were doing. But anyway, lost my train of thought. But anyway, I just want to say that was I think it's good to hear back from the outside agencies, and making sure that we reevaluate. I think we need to. Some of them I probably have been there for years, and maybe there were agreements in place. We don't know that, or maybe it's just a budget approval that was done, or I think that if there is no IGA, I would like to see maybe some document in place, for them. I don't know if there's one, but basically, I think we extend some of the dollars to them because I know we're a big county and we have to help one another, even just with a few dollars, but and others also pinch in for the program. So, but all in all, I think we've done the right thing, considering, but just here and there. But I think as we go along the way to the final budget, we may be able to maybe bring those up. But otherwise, I just want to say thank you for all the work that you guys put into it, both with the staff and also my colleagues. Thank you, for your questions and, support in various ways and stuff like that. So I just want to say thank you to you all, and Supervisor Fowler, please get well. And anyway, I just want to say thank you again.
Thank you, Supervisor Begay. Supervisor Vasquez.
Yes, thank you. Wow, we're finally at the point where we can close this down. It's been 9 days, pretty intense. But I got to tell you, overall, it was smoother than it has been in the last couple of years, and I appreciate that. And I want to thank all of you on the staff for preparing a well-balanced budget. I didn't feel like there were any real curveballs this time, and I appreciate that. It's a grind. I go home every day after these and can't think much. Mind feels like mush. But this process has been good. It's great to see all the great things that our county's doing. It's great to see and hear from the different departments and learn about all the different services that they're providing. And it's not just for us, it's for the public so that people know what we do and how we're spending our tax dollars. And so this process is just so important. But like I said, for me, I was really pleased with the process, really pleased with the conversations, and liked the way you brought back things for the wrap up. And, because I don't want to see things fall between the cracks. And I know in the past there have been moments of that, and I didn't feel that this time. And so I wanna congratulate the team for all your hard work and in guiding through this process and leading us through this tour through the county and how we spend our funding. And just overall, I'm pleased, and so I'm looking forward. It is uncertain times we're heading into, but I feel confident that our plan for this year will get us through FY26 in good shape. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fowler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to each of our staff for presenting to us. I apologize, I missed yesterday. Just know that all our employees are very, very valued, and all the work that is done throughout the county to take care of our residents. Really amazing work that everyone does, and just their commitment and their dedication. I just want to thank each employee, each staff that is working out there in your own capacity every day, and to your family for dedicating yourself and to choose Coconino County as a place to work. We really appreciate you. Just want to thank you, and we work on these budgets so that we might be able to meet some of your needs and try to keep everything up to where you're able to do your work. So thank you. The budget, I'm really happy that the library district is going to stay the same. That partnership is really important. I think it would have been very costly. Really happy they're focused on the bookmobile, and it's really good that that partnership is really strong. And I know our communities very much appreciate the library system that we have, and even the towns and cities that are within the county. I want to stay focused on emergency management because of the announcement that the grants to emergencies and then FEMA being evaluated, and we not being at the table. Not that we're not going to stop advocating, but we really need to keep an eye on emergency management. And since the Schultz fire, we have really, I mentioned the other day when Schultz fire, the fire started, it was really chaotic. And partners, we didn't really know where to sit and how to work with each other, but we've learned over the years. And now if there's a EOC building that's going to be put up with all those TVs, there's probably going to be lots of TV monitors. That's how they do their work out. So anyway, they all know what to do, the partners, and our county know how to work together. It doesn't matter where the emergency is. They're helping the cities and towns develop their own plans. So we really need to keep an eye on that federal grant. and federal dollars for our emergency management. The health department, we're hearing more cuts. Where are the impacts of those cuts? What are the locations? If our health department is getting cuts, then that means that our public health in general, our partners are also being cut. So what does that mean for our residents? Well, who's helping them? Is it a major health? Is it a major service that is much needed out there, and yet that's completely being cut? And how's the state handling that? I like to hear that about all these federal impacts. It's not so much just internally, but what's the impact from the outside? Head Start is being cut. One of the tribes, their Head Start was closed, and so then know that NATA or NACOG, we serve on that, and they're looking at their cuts as well. And so they are a service arm that we were just talking about, partners we work with, and yet their dollars are being cut. Then what kind of impact is that on our residents? And what does that mean for our programs? So that's something I think we kind of need to just keep an eye on. Rural broadband, we need to advocate for rural broadband. You just can't think that the state has an interest out here, but we still have to make sure that we're advocating and making sure that we are getting the service that we need, and that is that we want to make sure that those are delivered. CJCC, we already talked about that. I think we're in a really good place. That CJCC has gone up and down, like any programs that we've started. They go through its growing pains, and then it figures out what it's going to be doing. So thank you, and just making sure that overall the programs are continue to work together and they have the staff that they need, and evaluating through as we always do through the years, making sure it's running the way it's good for the employees as well as the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fowler. And yeah, just some closing remarks as well. Obviously, we are really entering some very uncertain times, and we started out our budget conversation with the county manager defining it as just great uncertainty, and it continues throughout. And I think that is why we took the approach we did with regards to the recommendations for the budget, and that the budget that the board is considering adopting. And, when we take a look at federal grants and the reduction of our federal grants, which is approximately 20% of the budget monies for us. Now, some of that's been because of flood mitigation, but it's substantial, and especially with HHS, and then the possibility of losing SRS funding that it has not even, it looks like we will lose our SRS funding. And then just the uncertainties of the economy, which the uncertainties with regards to the effects on our federal lands and the effects that some of the federal cuts have had on our public lands. What is that going to do to our sales tax, both our local sales tax and, of course, our state sales tax, which is another one of our major revenue sources. And so as a result of that, I really appreciate the recommendation that's being made by Siri and county management to take a very conservative view of this year's budget. We've always had that 10% reserve. That has kind of been our rainy day fund, if you will. And that has worked very well to our benefit in times of uncertainty. And then adding to it that $15 million stability fund, which hopefully will help us as we go forward and see what the impacts from the loss of federal funds, as well as the potential reduction due to sales taxes and lack of visitors and lack of people coming here spending money in Coconino County. But most importantly, as we talk about a lot, our budget and the budget that this board is responsible for overseeing and passing is intended to reflect what our values are. And I do think that the recommendations that have been made by the county management, the discussions that we, the board, have had, the recommendations have been brought forward by our departments, truly are a reflection of our values. As you've noticed, first and foremost, we've made sure that we are caring for our employees, our staff members who are there to care for us and to care for all of Coconino County. We certainly would like to have seen a greater than a 2.5% increase, but I think plus some others that we've added. But I think you can see that in these uncertain times, we need to do what we can to take care of our employees, understanding that there are other issues and other matters that also need to be addressed. And I'm going to say the same about our sheriff's department. We understand the importance and that they are really literally putting their life on the line to provide service to our county. And yet we understand that in these uncertain times, we want to make sure they recognize that we value them and value their service and understand we are limited in what we can and cannot do in terms of compensation. And we appreciate all the departments recognizing that as well, which is why when the departments came before us, there was very, very few additions to their budget. Again, recognizing that these are uncertain times, and yet recognizing that we want to do what we can to make sure we have the highest quality services to all of the members who across Coconino County. And I think we're doing that. I mean, everybody says public service is what we do, but we live that. And I hope the public realizes that and sees that. Is there more we can do? Yes. Is there more we want to do? Yes. But we have done what we can to make sure that all parts of our community and all across this vast county are heard, are recognized, and are served. And there's more we can do, but we've done a pretty good job of taking care of most of the needs across Coconino County and providing the essential services. So I'm proud of this board. I'm proud of the work that's been done by the county manager's office, Siri, and finance, our departments, and each and every staff member that really everybody has been a part of this whole budget process. I want to thank them all. And I also want to thank Supervisor Begay, who was chair during the creation of this budget process itself. And we have had past difficulties in the process. And I know that Supervisor Begay met with county management regularly over the last 3 months to make sure that we actually had a process that would be understandable, that would be clear, would be transparent, and something to help us get through this. And I think you've accomplished that, Supervisor Begay. So thank you. And to county management and the team, you all did a great job. You made it easy for us. It was a long 2 weeks, but you really did make it easy for us. I want to thank you. And I hope the public understands that we're doing the very best we can to make sure that our money goes, their money, because it is their money is being used to the highest and best value and used for our whole communities, or all of our communities in our whole county. So thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. It's been a long 2 weeks, and now we get to go into a very long week with WIR and leaving behind Supervisor Entreveras to hold down the fort back here. So appreciate that. All right. Any other comments, conclusions? Otherwise, great job. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Wait, meeting adjourned.